Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller, Manny Hill for some hot routes again on a Thursday night. Hopefully, you are enjoying watching the Green Bay Packers, at least so far into the game as we're recording this and going live. Not playing good at football is what has been going on. Although there's just, it's not really like anything can truly be celebrated by Vikings fans when the Lions are playing well. But I think that there's more enjoyment when it's the Packers struggling. But I have a question for you, Manny, to start the show. One time when I was in college, my class went on a road trip and it was like for some school thing. And after we did all of the whatever we were supposed to do, presentations that we watched or meeting people in the industry, that sort of thing, everybody was kind of hanging out. Now, you know that I'm not a party guy, but I'm around as things are happening at the hotel. And several of my fellow students were playing a game called Have You Ever? And as I'm reading, I don't know, ESPN on my laptop or something, they're playing this game. And so it's have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? And people are drinking if they have and not if they didn't. Manny, have you ever tweeted an NFL player your trade idea? Because some people apparently must be doing this. I would not have a sip of Diet Dr. Pepper in this case. I have never tweeted at an athlete my trade ideas, but apparently a lot of people are because Justin Jefferson's not that thrilled about it.
I don't think I've ever. Well, I take that back. I was going to say I don't think I've ever tweeted at an athlete, period. I think I tweeted at Andre Iguodala one time, maybe about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, about something about him. There was a rumor that he wanted to be traded from the Warriors or something like that. And I guess he was like trolling. And I replied back, like, I can't believe people believe this from you. And he actually tweeted me back, like, yeah, you're right. I can't believe that. But that was the only time I think I've ever tweeted at an athlete, period, let alone trade ideas. It's kind of crazy. And, with Justin Jefferson, I mean, neither one of us, and I imagine a lot of other people, are not surprised by his response to all of that stuff today. I mean, the 3 games into the season, and yeah, they're 0-3, and it's a disappointing start, but we know that Justin Jefferson is not going to punt on a season. That guy is going to show up ready to play, and he still has a belief that the Vikings can turn this season around. And why wouldn't he have that belief? I mean, that's all 53 guys in that locker room should have that belief that they can turn things around. Now, us, on the other hand, can look at the way this team has played the first 3 games and look at the schedule up ahead. And what the hell, man, we're free to speculate on whatever we want to. So I think it kind of works out both ways for us and for him as well. I mean, it might be a motivating factor too, to kind of show people like, no, we're not done yet. The season is not over.
Yeah, and they have the right opponent for that to say, hey, we were driven to get this season back on track and beat the lowly Carolina Panthers. If you did not catch what Justin Jefferson said, here it is.
I mean, you kind of got to accept it. You got to learn from the battles that you face. At the end of the day, it's not going to be perfect every time. It's things that you got to go throughout the season to really tell if you're going to be a great team or not. Of course, we're handling the adversity earlier in the season, with the turnovers and being 0-3 to start. But there's a whole bunch of more games to go. I mean, I'm tired of people saying, we're looking into next season, all of the trades and stuff like that. We're focused still on this season. We have a lot more games to go, and we have a lot more things to accomplish this season. So, I mean, we're still focused in. We still have that same goal as we had before the season, and we just need to fix a few things, and I feel like we'll be back on track.
He went on to say, Manny, that he sees all of your mentions that if you tag him in a trade idea or whatever. So I had an idea that might be a little fun since I have a pair of Oakleys right here.
Nice.
Manny, I'll pretend to be Justin Jefferson and you tell me your trade ideas and I will answer it as if I was replying back as Justin Jefferson. So go ahead.
Okay, JJ, listen, man. I mean, the team is 0-3. You got a really tough schedule coming up. Obviously you got Carolina coming up this Sunday, but it gets really difficult after that, man. I mean, we're talking Kansas City coming to town. Then you got to go to Soldier Field. The Bears stink, but Soldier Field's always a tough place to play for the Vikings. Then you got San Francisco. I mean, it's a tough schedule. It's tough sledding coming up, man. How about a trade, Justin? How about a trade? Let's get you into a situation where you can win, because you're used to winning, right? You're used to winning national championships at LSU. What about a trade to the Kansas City Chiefs? In fact, you could get traded to Kansas City, JJ, and you won't even have to travel anywhere right away because they're coming to town anyway in a couple of weeks. So, I mean, you won't even have to travel. And then by the time you play in that game in uniform, you can have your first game with the Kansas City Chiefs, JJ, could be a revenge game. How about that? Let's make it happen. How about a trade to the Kansas City Chiefs? Let's let the rich get richer.
There's only one problem, Manny. I only have 10 fingers. I can't fit all the rings that we're going to win if it's me and Patrick Mahomes. Okay. That's going to be like when Brady and Randy Moss went undefeated, only we're going to finish the job if you trade me to Kansas City. But here's my thing, Manny. You can't trade me for less than 3 first-round picks because I have pride. I don't know if you know this. Players care about what they were traded for. So are you telling me that you're going to trade me for 3 first-round picks? That might not be a good idea for your franchise. Also, how's Kansas City's cafeteria? Because everything at TCO Performance Center is pretty sweet. So I think I want to continue to play there. But three first-round picks, that sounds like you're going to ruin your franchise. But I'm cool to go play with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? Look, I'll take 3 first-round picks. Why not? I mean, I'll take one of those young receivers from Kansas City as well, probably back in return, but definitely 3 first-round picks. Make them all back to back to back too. 3 first-round picks in a row. It'll be towards the end of the first round, obviously, because you guys would be, winning 14, 15 games a season. But hey, man, I mean, I'll take 3 first-round picks for you. Why not?
Okay, how about this? Instead of trading me, what if you just trade the quarterback and then we kind of play with Nick Mullins for the year. But then I really see I'm a big college football fan. I went to LSU. Maybe you guys have heard that. I've been watching a lot of college football this year. I'm seeing this guy named Caleb. I'm seeing this dude named Drake. I don't know where he came from, but he's awesome. I'm thinking that maybe even though I need to get my catches, that we should probably get a quarterback who can, make a play or something, or help us build a complete roster. So you guys going to trade Kirk and help us get one of those high draft picks?
Justin, that's a pretty interesting idea. I mean, what if we listen? What if we trade? What if we trade Kirk? I don't know if Kirk's in the room there with you, but what if we trade Kirk? Look, we know that these 49er rumors have been flying all over the place, right? We've been talking about this Kirk to the 49ers for like 3 years, right? I know Brock Purdy's playing pretty well right now, but you never know with the 49ers. They always seem to have a quarterback get hurt. Kirk's like one of the most durable quarterbacks in the league, right? So let's move him. Let's trade him to San Francisco. Maybe get, probably won't get a first round pick for him, but maybe a second, maybe a third round pick. We could make something like that happen. And as long as you're okay with Nick Mullins being the quarterback for the rest of the season, the Vikings are probably going to end up being, 3-14 or something like that. Or maybe they'll get to 4 or 5 wins, but then they're going to be in that top 5. Then you could get, what? And I'll tell you what, JJ, you can have, if the Vikings get the number 1 pick, you can decide which quarterback they take, whether it's going to be Drake May or Caleb Williams. We'll let you decide that. We'll let you pick.
Okay, I'm all in for this idea, but here's the problem. I'm looking at my pockets and I don't see enough money in my pockets right now. So I'm going to need about 35 mil a year. And then whatever you guys want, well, how about we sign a contract first and then we're good to go?
You know what? As soon as Kirk Cousins is off the books, we'll be able to make that happen because whatever quarterback you take, he's going to be really cheap to start out. So we can pay you. We already gave TJ his deal. He's locked in. He's playing great. we get you locked in on a pretty nice contract. The quarterback, whether it's Caleb Williams or Drake May, they'll be really cheap. So we'll be able to afford you. We'll get you whatever you want.
I think I'd rather stay here, draft the quarterback, build the defense, have it be my team, and go forward. And I mean, those practice fields are so perfectly cut at TCO Performance Center. I want to stay. I want to stay here. And MSP. I fly a lot. MSP is a great airport.
And listen, that young quarterback is going to throw to you a lot. He's going to know, he's going to recognize you as his safety valve. You and TJ Hawkinson, you guys are going to get almost all of the targets. You know, Jordan Addison's really good, and you can be a nice, mentor to him and kind of teach him how to become a really good pro wide receiver. But you're going to get all of the targets, man. That rookie quarterback is going to be relying heavily on you to make it happen.
Excuse me, I have to go help Kirk pack. Just give me a minute. Horse Feathers says that you missed your calling as a negotiator, which it's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, well, your vocal tones enough could soothe anyone into submission. So realistically, truthfully, stop tweeting Justin Jefferson your trade ideas. That's weird. The first one, I don't think that Kansas City could afford Justin Jefferson with how much they're paying Patrick Mahomes. One of those receivers they draft has to make it happen. But maybe if there is another team, they could do it. But don't do it. Don't do it. That's insane.
Right.
That's total bat bleep crazy. I saw that they got to Kevin Seifert with this, and he was cracking on Twitter with this trade Jefferson for 3 first-round draft picks. It's like, okay, well, Laquan Treadwell, Mike Hughes, like get him, Lewis Seen. There you go, 3 firsts. Like, get to it. I've never believed in that for a single moment, and you'll never convince me that moving on from a Hall of Fame player will ever be a good idea. It wasn't a good idea to move on from Randy Moss. They were kind of forced. It wasn't a good idea to move on from Stephon Diggs, and they just fell ass backwards into Justin Jefferson and got lucky there. But if they had drafted Jalen Reagor instead, that would be talked about as like a Herschel Walker level awful, worst thing the franchise has ever done trade. And you would definitely regret it if you trade away Jefferson. By the way, he's 25. So unless your franchise is ending like 3 weeks from now, it's probably the best idea to keep him for a long time and figure out the rest. So I immediately dismissed that idea. That to me is way too, hey, I thought of this great idea to share at Thanksgiving with my family to get everybody worked up, but not anything you would ever realistically consider. The Kirk trade stuff, truthfully, I'm messing around, not speaking for Justin Jefferson. I fully believe that man is sitting there today thinking we're going to go to Carolina and win. We're going to upset either KC or San Francisco. We're going to win in Chicago, and then look at the schedule. It is not that threatening. You can beat Green Bay. You can absolutely beat Denver. You can beat Vegas. Like, we're going on a run. That's what he thinks. He is not thinking about any of those trades that you're sending him. He wants to make the playoffs. He wants Kirk to continue to be the quarterback for this season. I guarantee you that. After that, though, I mean, look, if they win 8 games and miss the playoffs, and 3 out of his first 4 years with Kirk Cousins as his quarterback are missing the playoffs, I get this question sometimes, like, will Jefferson be upset if he's gone? Jefferson has always said, hey, it's a business and I want to win, and that's it. Well, they haven't won, and if they don't win this year, then I think he'd be comfortable with them, moving on. But I don't think he would be happy at all with them trading Kirk Cousins. I think he wants to fight until the end. And that's why all those ideas that you're tweeting him, they all, okay, I get them. You get them, Manny. Like, we totally understand it. The Jets or the Falcons or whatever, all that makes sense. Except for, even if you are 1-5, Justin Jefferson is going to say, we can win a bunch of games. And I don't think that anybody around him wants to give up on a season for a 2nd-round draft pick and sacrifice him being frustrated for the whole rest of the year, losing week after week after week. If you saw him last week, he was crushed after losing that game. Despite all the numbers, he was one of the last people off the field after losing that game last week. I think you would rather just stick it out and also believe in the fact that there's lots of good quarterback prospects, and it's not always the first guy taken. And whoever you're taking is going to come into a great situation. So I put the odds of them trading Kirk Cousins at pretty low. Unless they lose to Carolina, I might bump it up a little bit. Then 0-4 is pretty rough, but I would put them at extremely low. So there's really no point in tweeting him who you want to trade Kirk for.
Not at all. And, I think you go back to his rookie year, talking about Justin Jefferson in 2020, the COVID year. Remember, they started out 1-5 that season, and there was so much talk about, trading Kirk, trading some of these other guys, these other veteran players, and tearing this thing down and starting over. And, on the surface at that time, from us, looking on the outside looking in, it probably did seem like a good idea, but he wasn't thinking that. And then look what happened. They won a few games, got themselves back to 500, and then they were back into the playoff conversation. Now, that season they went into Tampa Bay and dropped one to Tom Brady, and then it was kind of over after that. But you cannot convince Justin Jefferson that an 0-3 start means that your season's over, or even an 0-4 start for that matter, because he has seen evidence that a team can turn it around and get themselves back into the mix. It was just, unfortunately, that team in 2020 just couldn't finish the job and get over that last hump to get in. But you're not going to be able to convince Justin Jefferson that this season is over after this start.
All right, until you're eliminated, he's going to believe that. And also, I don't think he wants a backup quarterback throwing him the ball at any point. Tang says Vikings would like to tank for Caleb. The issue is that Caleb may stay. He wouldn't if he's going to the Vikings. I mean, if you told him you could play with Jefferson, Darisaw, Hawkinson, Addison, who he knows and played with Jordan Addison and had his breakout season with Addison, he's coming to Minnesota. Really, the only question is, if the Bears want him, would he decide to stay another year? Because then he might be like, I don't know, man, that is a graveyard. Although there's lots of teams that have gone through that. The Buffalo Bills drafted J.P. Lossman, E.J. Manuel, Trent Edwards, whatever, and then they land Josh Allen, and it changes the whole franchise. But okay. How about this? Well, last question on this. If you were going to tweet him a reasonable trade, like not involving him or Kirk Cousins, is there a trade you could tweet Justin Jefferson where he'd be like, you know what? I actually like that. I actually like that trade. I'm going to sign off on that. It doesn't have to be anything involving him, but what would it be?
Oh man. Maybe it wouldn't be Kirk either. Gosh, that's a tough question. It's a good question. It's a tough question. Probably, maybe you think if you could get a first round pick for Danielle Hunter, maybe you could convince him of that. It's Danielle plays on the other side of the ball. Obviously, it would weaken a defense that is already kind of bad anyway. So in the short term, it could be kind of crippling for the defense. But if you can get a first-round pick for Danielle Hunter, even if it's a late first-round pick, I think you got to do it. And if you can make that happen, I don't imagine that Justin Jefferson would hate it. He probably wouldn't love it because you're saying goodbye to a teammate. But I can't imagine if you could get a first-round pick out of it that Justin Jefferson would hate it.
Yeah. Scott has a good one. I love this one. Hunter for Kyler Murray. That's now you talk about awkward. Kyler Murray comes walking in and like, who knows about the cap and everything else with something like this. Kyler Murray comes walking in. He's not going to play this year for the Vikings, but he's going to be in the quarterback room, get to know Jefferson, Kevin O'Connell, and, oh, hi, Kirk. I got next. Now, I'm leaving that door open. I'm leaving the Kyler Murray door open, but Arizona, if they overachieve through this first half, and it might have just been a blip on the radar. I remember, how about this, Manny? This will impress you. I remember an early 90s game between the Cardinals and the Cowboys where Kent Graham beat Troy Aikman, and the announcers on a Thursday night game, I think, were declaring that the Cardinals had taken their next step forward as a franchise with this huge win. They finished with 4 wins. The Cowboys went to the Super Bowl. So, I
I remember
wouldn't make
that.
too much of that, but It is possible they overachieve and then they want Kyler to come back and then he plays great and they want to roll with him. Like, I think that's possible. But that might be one that he signed off on to get Kyler Murray in the building. I don't know. I think that the only trade that Justin Jefferson would actually favorite on social media would be if you said trade a late round draft pick to a team that is falling apart for a pass rusher, because the Marcus Davenport thing has failed. Danielle Hunter's out here leading the league in sacks and nobody else is getting to the passer. I think he would want improving trades. I don't think that he would want anything to take away from the team, which makes it pointless to actually send him his trades, because that's what all of us armchair GMs are always talking about when you're 0-3.
Yeah, 100%. And ultimately, he wants to win, and everybody on that roster wants to win, and they're not giving up on this season. And so, even if it would make some sense to move on from some of the veteran players to try and maybe stockpile some draft picks for the future, you're not going to be able to convince a lot of those guys, not just Justin Jefferson. You're not going to be able to convince a lot of those guys that to be okay with that. Ultimately it's a business, and these things happen all the time in the NFL and in a lot of different sports leagues. But I can't imagine that you trading away a guy, unless it's going to make your team better, that too many people would be thrilled about it.
Jonathan says, sitting here watching the Lions dismantle the Packers, how are we not able to blow teams out like that? Yeah, it's 24-3 as we speak. The answer is because since the year 2019, this team has had Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins, a good quarterback and a all-world wide receiver, and a lot of holes. Hey, people love Swiss cheese because there's a lot of good cheese, but there's also a lot of holes. And that's kind of like this team. And this is what happens when you have massive flaws, but also enough talent. You could be in any game, and you can also keep anyone else in any game. So I think that's why. But the Lions, what we're seeing over these last 2 weeks is the roar has been restored. I mean, they pummeled the Atlanta Falcons, and now they are bashing the faces into the Packers. I mean, they lost one game. People are like, oh, maybe not. That roster's legit. And I think that what we're seeing is the gap in the roster talent between the Lions as a whole and the Vikings is pretty wide. And I don't think they're going to have a lot of trouble winning this division. I also think that, with Jordan Love, with the Packers, every year we declare their defense to be something special. It never is under Joe Barry. And Love, has been good, but I haven't seen a greatness. I mean, it's kind of a week-to-week thing with him. And I'm not convinced yet that he can be more than competent from time to time. And we're going to have to see on that. But I mean, the Vikings could definitely still finish second in this division. I'm not convinced that the Packers are like a great team, even if they do have some more talent on defense. Their offensive line, Bakhtiari is out. Elgton Jenkins is not playing, and this is not a quarterback who I think is going to just snap the ball, get rid of it quick. I think he likes to hold on to the ball, which can cause some problems, especially against the Lions team that rushes the passer really well. You can respond to that, Manny, but do that in just a second, because we have ad reads on the show now. We're legit. This is big time.
Love it.
I have to read them now. And it starts with pizza. This is a really great place to start. And you guys should make Little Caesars, the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, part of your game day. Order online during their pizza pregame, 1 hour before NFL games. Get ready for some football and fun. Choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. Either way, you win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or their in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends, enjoy a few slices during the tastiest hour before kickoff. Not too hard, Manny, to convince me to talk about pizza. Also, Prize Picks, which we love here on the show. If you missed it, we have a brand new segment on the show that we're doing every week with Prize Picks. It's very, very simple. You just pick more or less between 2 and 6 player stat projections. So I've done well sometimes, not as well other times, but say that Kirk Cousins is expected to throw for 283.5 yards. You pick more or less, and that's it. and you're done. And one of the reasons I love Prize Picks is that it only takes a second to do, and it doesn't take a second mortgage to play. You can turn $10 into $250 with a few taps. So prizepicks.com/purple with the code purple, and that will get you a match of up to $100 on your first deposit. We've had a lot of fun with that. And every time we do the pizza read, people talk about it in the comments because everyone loves pizza. So should you be having a serious reaction to what's going on with the Lions right now, Manny?
I think so. I mean, they look really legit right now. I mean, I had a little bit of doubt even after they went to Kansas City and won that game because the Chiefs were not at full strength. They didn't have Chris Jones. He was still holding out with his contract, and Travis Kelce was banged up. But for them to get that win is huge. Tim with pizza. That's fantastic. Yeah, for them to get that win and then bounce back from the loss to Seattle at home with the win over Atlanta, and then they're just absolutely demolishing the Packers right now. They look good, man. And I think if Dan Campbell can avoid like the whatever perplexing coaching decision late in the season or something that might cost them a game, this team has all of the goods, I think, to certainly win this division. And depending on the matchup that they get in the playoffs, can maybe win a game or two and go on a run. And look, Jared Goff, I know Jared Goff was an easy target to make fun of when the Rams kind of casted him off for Matthew Stafford. And obviously that worked out for the Rams winning the Super Bowl. But Jared Goff has led a team to a Super Bowl himself. He's not, he was a high draft pick. He's physically talented. He did a really nice job last year of not turning the ball over a lot, which he had kind of started to do in the latter part of his Rams career. But that dude is pretty good, man. And you give him some weapons, which he has. You give him a good offensive line, which he has, and a defense that has some players too. That's a team that the Lions look pretty good. They look pretty legit right now. The Vikings continue to struggle. The Packers are kind of just a meddling, mediocre team. And the Bears stink. So it's kind of setting up for the Lions to take control of this division early on and maybe run away with it.
I mean, this is a hot take. I feel like Jared Goff is the most underappreciated sports player. I mean, he has led 3 top 5 offenses. He went to a Super Bowl, and then he turns around the Lions last year with a great offense, not his fault on the defensive side. And they win a huge game at Lambeau to knock the Packers out. And then this year they start off their rolling. It looks like after this they're going to be 3-1, save for a massive comeback. The entire franchise has been rebuilt around him, and he's operating Ben Johnson's offense brilliantly. And all I ever hear about is how great the offensive coordinator is. It's like, I don't know, man. I saw this guy put up a perfect quarterback rating in LA against Mike Zimmer's defense, which is pretty impossible to do. And certainly, Goff has his shortcomings as a quarterback, but I mean, all he has done now with 2 franchises is play really well, except for the 1 year that they're tanking. So I don't know. I think that the Rams made the right decision, obviously winning the Super Bowl to get Stafford, and he fit what they wanted to do. But at the same time, Goff, I think, is now proving to be a pretty good quarterback. And it's not just McVay that was pulling his puppet strings or whatever, which, hey, when we get to the playoffs, how dynamic is he going to be and all that stuff? I don't know. But, he's got my respect for sure. I wanted to ask you, so I went through a bunch of teams. Somebody asked me in a mailbag question for the newsletter, which purpleinsider.com, if you want to sign up, then you get Friday mailbag, about, has it ever worked with teams getting to this or winning the Super Bowl if they completely tanked and tore it all apart? And the answer is, in part, that Brady and Mahomes have won like all the Super Bowls recently. In the last 20 years, Brady has 7, Mahomes has 2 in the last, basically like 20 years. So that's hard. But I found a bunch of teams that became very, very competitive after being really bad, including the 49ers, which never get talked about as a tank. They went 2-14, 4-12, 6-10, like 3 years in a row. and drafted a bunch of players that now are the center of their team. But it's a little harder to find teams that were middling like the Vikings, and I still expect the Vikings to be this year. I still expect 8 wins at least, considering their schedule. But it's rarer to see teams turn it in a direction where it goes from middling to Super Bowl contender than it is from tank to being really competitive. Can you think in your steel trap brain, Manny, of examples of teams who have been able to go from where the Vikings are right now to being competitive for Super Bowls? Because I've been trying to think of this kind of all day after getting this question, and I was curious to see what you thought.
Yeah, the first team that came to my mind was Kansas City because, they were they were a little better than, I think before they got Mahomes, they were a little better than like a middling team. They were a team, they were going to the playoffs every year with Alex Smith, but they just couldn't get over that hump. Alex was good enough to get them there. They were winning that division. The division wasn't great. And they were doing what they were supposed to do by making the playoffs, but it just wasn't. With Alex, they just didn't have enough to sort of move the needle in the postseason. And then, they made a decision. They drafted Patrick Mahomes because they realized, look, Alex is good, but he's not good enough. We got to take a swing at a young guy here and make something happen. And obviously, the rest has been history for the last 5+ years with Mahomes. But the other team I thought about was the team that the Chiefs played in the Super Bowl last year, the Philadelphia Eagles. And here's why. Now, I know the Eagles, people are listening right now. They're saying, well, man, the Eagles just won the Super Bowl, 5 or 6 years ago. But let's take the Eagles post Nick Foles' Cinderella Super Bowl run. All right. They were kind of a middling team that was hovering around 500. They had Carson Wentz, who, even though he was looking like the MVP of the league the year they won the Super Bowl and then he got hurt. After that, there were a lot of questions about is Carson Wentz good enough to get this team, to keep this team in serious contention? And obviously he showed that he wasn't, but they were good enough to kind of hang around 500. And I go back to that 2019 season. I think they won the division. I think the Eagles went 9-7. They won the NFC East. It wasn't a great division that year. They get beat in the wild card round by Seattle. And then, the next year, the wheels kind of fell off the wagon a little bit, and they ended up 4-11-1 or something like that. And Wentz really started to decline. And, in that offseason, that 2020 offseason, they drafted Jalen Hurts in the 3rd round. And they went through that middling season. They made a change in head coach. But they took a swing on a young guy. They realized the guy that they had in place was not good enough. They took a swing on a young guy. And then a couple of years later, they ended up in the Super Bowl, on the doorstep of winning that Super Bowl. If they had maybe a little bit more time on the clock, Jalen Hurts maybe marches them down the field and they end up beating the Chiefs. So I'm kind of thinking, man, if the Vikings if last year for the Vikings was like the 2019 Eagles, good enough to win a weak division, had some things go their way, couldn't quite get over the hump in the postseason, take a swing on a young quarterback and move on from the veteran guy. Maybe that's kind of a similar situation.
And one of my favorite pastimes early February, was to Google people's takes on Jalen Hurts and why are they moving on from Carson Wentz when they just need this, and this. Carson Wentz is a good enough quarterback to win with. Where does that sound familiar? I thought of a similar example that maybe isn't come up very often, but how about the Joe Flacco Baltimore Ravens drafting Lamar Jackson?
Yeah.
Not their first round pick that year, Hayden Hurst. But still, they had gone in the 2 years before Lamar Jackson was picked. In fact, you can even go back 3 years before. 2014, they were 10-6. 2015, Flacco got hurt and they struggled. 2016, 8-8. 2017, 9-7, and then 2018. I think Flacco also got hurt, and that's what opened the door for Lamar, but they didn't bring him back in after he was 4-5. So they were like a middling type of team. But it was in Flacco's 30s, so the later part of his career. It's really a testament to how Kirk has kept himself up, because Joe Flacco is only like 2 years older than Kirk, but it feels like he's 100 years older than Kirk. But not the point. It's just that, they went 8-8, 9-7 in 16 and 17. They were middling teams, and Flacco didn't play horribly. And people in Baltimore still defended Joe Flacco and said, hey, he's a good quarterback, but he was expensive. He was getting on the older side, and they needed to build up the rest of that roster. And 2 years later, I mean, you're talking about a Lamar MVP, when again, there was kind of like this, oh, I guess they're picking a quarterback, but they have their franchise guy in Flacco. So I think that that one is a pretty similar situation, because their team was not terrible. When Lamar came in, they were able to get to the playoffs, and then the very next year be great. And that's the thing, is sometimes when we talk about a rookie quarterback, Manny, it's like, oh, well, the guy's going to come in and then just throw the ball into the stands every play until he figures out how to play. But there have been numerous examples of guys coming into teams that were pretty good, including Brock Purdy last year. That's an extreme example because they're not pretty good. They're really good. But how about Dak Prescott with Dallas Cowboys? I mean, there's been times
Joe
throughout history.
Flacco. Joe Flacco.
Yes. Yes.
Same thing.
Joe Flacco was a second-round pick in 2008, went 11-5. I mean, RG3 happened where he was able to come into a situation with a great coach and some good weapons there until he hurt his knee. I mean, there are examples all the time of rookie quarterbacks coming in and having success. And even CJ Stroud has looked good through like a couple games. Looks like he knows how to play football. So I don't think it has to mean that you are just throwing away your future. In fact, I think of all the circumstances that any quarterback has come into, next year, a rookie quarterback being dropped into Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and the situation they have, it might be the best circumstance that a rookie quarterback's been dropped into basically since Dak Prescott.
And a head coach who is an offensive mind, played the position himself. Yeah, I mean, you have to think, let's be honest here too. The Vikings have a pretty good history, especially with under the ownership of the Wilfs, of treating their players really well. I mean, guys that come here typically like to be here. You know what I mean? So even in that situation, I can't imagine that a young quarterback could come in here. Now, look, there's going to be more Christian Ponders out here. Okay, I understand that, but I gotta think that with the way the Vikings are set up, with the way ownership is set up, with the talent that's on the team, certainly on the offensive side, a young, forward-thinking, offensive-minded head coach, I got to think it'd be setting up pretty nicely for any young quarterback to step in, unless the kid is just a boneheaded idiot, which there have been a few of those. But most of these young guys that come in that are talented, have a knack for the game, can see the game well. If they step into this situation with the Vikings, I got to think they'll have some pretty early success.
You're right. Flacco was a mid-late first-round pick, not second-round pick. My bad on that. But still, like, that's another thing. Oh, well, if we're not getting Caleb Williams, we're not going to be able to succeed. Mahomes, Allen, these guys were not the first quarterback taken. Lamar Jackson, not the first quarterback taken. And fair enough, our friend Chuck Aoki. Yes, the best situation since Brock Purdy. Yeah, last year. Good point, because they had a good defense.
Russell Wilson is another one, though. He stepped in he came in and won the starting job in camp. Probably not a super difficult task to beat Matt Flynn, but look, Seattle had went and paid Matt Flynn a lot of money to be the starting quarterback, and they drafted Russell Wilson in the mid rounds, and Russell won the job. And then the next year they won the Super Bowl. So it does happen. And I think it's happened more often than we might realize.
Okay. Another ad read real quick. Manny, your skin looks glorious, but it could always look more pristine like mine because everyone should try Caldera Lab. You might act tough, Manny, and pretend that you don't care about how your face looks and your skin, but we all know that you want to show up to holiday get-togethers this fall looking good. That's where Caldera Lab comes in. Over 100,000 men trust Caldera Lab because of the way their easy skincare routine turns into clearer and beautiful skin. It also makes a great gift as well. You're going to want to try their regimen, which has 3 parts: the clean slate, that's where you wash your face and leaves you feeling refreshed; the base layer moisturizes and hydrates; and the good helps your skin look tighter and smoother. You and I, Manny, we need to look younger anytime we can. So that's good for us. We've all looked in the mirror and thought, when did I start looking this old? When did I get this wrinkle? Well, 94% of men showed improvements in their appearance using Caldera Lab. So just for you guys, use the code INSIDER at calderalab.com. Get 20% off right now. 20% off at calderalab.com with the code INSIDER to make unforgettable first impressions and give the best gifts this holiday. So this week, man, is pretty funny in the NFL. There's a lot of bad teams playing each other. We're like 3 weeks in, and we've already got some really horrendous games going on, which I think is kind of funny. Do you wanna give us a prediction for Denver, Chicago? Do you want to talk about this? Like, isn't this crazy how fast this has happened? They're like looking around the league, going, "Oh wow, Caleb Williams bowls are going on everywhere."
uh, what if they just like not play the game and just merge the two teams?
Did you see what tickets are going for?
No, I did not.
You have $2.11.
Come on. Come on. Is it Soldier Field? Is it Chicago? It's in Chicago?
Yes. A Denver reporter tweeted out that on StubHub they were listed for $2.11.
Wow. Wow. It's week 4. It's week 4, and they're already giving tickets away. That is wow. I mean, maybe they really do need to combine the two teams, contract one of the teams. I don't know. Yeah, both teams were awful last week. I will say I think the Broncos will win the game. The Broncos, I don't I didn't think the Broncos would be like contending for a playoff spot seriously, but I thought they would be better than this. And I feel like they still should be better than this. I mean, Sean Payton didn't just completely forget how to coach in the year off that he took, right? Like he couldn't have. I mean, that guy's won a lot of games. He won a Super Bowl in New Orleans. What we saw on Sunday was just unreal. Yeah, I feel like the Broncos will find a way to win. It's probably going to be ugly because neither team is very good. And games always seem to be ugly at Soldier Field, but I think the Broncos will find a way to win that game 25-22. I think it's going to be a really weird, unconventional score too.
Yeah. What about Bob asking about Courtney Cronin will absolutely be on the show when the Vikings play Chicago. Yeah, there's no question. That's always gonna, and I can't wait. I mean, you yeah, well, man, I mean, we used to have some good times with you and I and Courtney on the old whatever it was called when we first got was it every Friday night we were doing a show, you, me, and Courtney? Was that how it worked out?
I thought maybe was it Wednesday nights? It might have been
whatever
Wednesday
it
nights.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like one day a week.
Yeah. It was I think Purple Live, I think was the name of the show.
That's
if I'm
right.
not mistaken.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. I that ought to be I'll be watching definitely when you have Courtney on next week. That'll be fun. That'll be some interesting conversations talking about the Bears.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. So I want to ask you one more thing just about this week's schedule. We talk about 0-3 is pretty much a death knell, but I don't see how that's much different from 1-3. So which 1-2 team that doesn't get in the Viking discussion? It's so the whole record thing drives me kind of crazy. Like, well, if you go this, then your chances to make the playoffs are that. It's like, okay, but if the Vikings start 0-3 and then got to 3-3, what are the playoff odds? Like, do you get them back? Like, hey, well, now we're 3-3, so then it's 40% or something, and then it didn't matter, like, or did it? I never understood these. But if you're 1-2, you need a win pretty badly. So, in your mind, who this week needs the wins the most that's sitting at 1-2?
I'm going to go with Jacksonville. And the reason why is because that was pretty bad. You lose at home in week 2 to Kansas City. I mean, I don't think there's any shame in that. But you stay home the following week. You're bringing a Houston Texans team that has a rookie quarterback, a team that doesn't really have a ton of talent, but maybe they're well coached by DeMeco Ryans. And you just lay an egg at home. You get blown out by 3 touchdowns, by 20 points. And you let this young rookie quarterback kind of throw the ball all over your defense. I feel like Jacksonville needs to get back on track and, let everybody know that they're the favorites to win this division and they're the ones that should be taking control of this division, because none of the other 3 teams are, at least on paper, should not be good enough to win this division. I think Jacksonville taking on the Atlanta Falcons over across the pond in London on Sunday morning, I think really need a win, probably in the worst way out of all the teams that are 1-2.
I think that both LA teams need it pretty bad. Although I'm not really sure if you're a Rams fan, maybe you lived in St. Louis before, so you just watched them on TV and you just stuck with them. I'm kidding, mostly. If you're a Rams fan and your team is 1-2, and it was really bad last year, and it doesn't look like it's going to be great this year, do you care? I mean, this is the interesting thing about winning the Super Bowl is I feel like you get about 5 years before anyone really cares how it goes after that. Not that I would know, having grown up in Buffalo and moved here, but that's how it seems. Like, if you win the Super Bowl for the next 4 or 5 years, everyone's kind of going to be like, oh, well, we still got the ring. And everyone will remember the time they climbed Vaseline poles and fell off or whatever happened in Philadelphia. But it was probably about that for Philly, where it was like 3 or 4 years, and then all of a sudden the pressure started to build on Doug Peterson. I don't think that there's a lot of pressure on Sean McVay, even by the end of this year, if they win like 6 games, but it feels like if they're going to have a decent team and stay in that race, they need a win. And then the Chargers. This is one of my favorite things that happens, Manny, is when a team beats a bad Vikings defense. I see Kurt Warner breaking down how they did it. I see like Keenan Allen doing an interview about it. And it's like, how many times over the last 3 years, well, I guess going back to 2020 and now into this year, have we seen the opponent be like, wow, they had a historic day. Let's interview DeAndre Swift or, whoever else. It's like all the time. All the time that
Daniel
happens.
Jones,
and
man.
I was kind of laughing about that. But the Chargers they should look at themselves and say, we almost blew that game. Like, we were that close to blowing that game. And they play Anthony Richardson returning to what might not be a terrible Indianapolis Colts team.
Daniel Jones, man. I mean, he shredded the Vikings defense in the playoffs, and it got him paid. It got him paid a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, the Chargers, I guess if you're the Chargers, you would feel a little bit better about yourselves because of the 0-2 start, and you needed that win against the Vikings last week pretty badly. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like with the way things have gone for them over the last couple of years with Brandon Staley, at the helm, I just feel like I just need to see more, and good opponent for it to happen again, this weekend. They're at home against the Raiders, and I mean, the Raiders are just not good at all. So, maybe this confidence just kind of continues for them, that if you get another win against the Raiders, and you're 2-2, and then you got Dallas on the schedule after that, and then who knows? The Cowboys are kind of a hard team. They're a good team, but they're occasionally a team that will have a hiccup. And if you're the Chargers, you might be feeling pretty good about that if you can win against the Raiders and then you take on Dallas, and then now all of a sudden you've won 3 in a row. you're 3-2 and you're feeling pretty good about yourself again. So who knows, man? But yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
Okay, this just popped into my mind since we were having this conversation. Can we do like a quick off the cuff rank of since 2020 the funniest people to have great days against the Vikings? Probably just a quarterback, because I can't remember every running back or whatever else. But I mean, Bryce Young, if he starts, considering his first couple starts and how little they have on that team, would rank very highly if he has a good game. But just off the top of my head, the Cooper Rush game comes to mind in
Yeah.
2021. And yeah, he won some other games, but you can't be serious. Mike White played amazing against them, even though the Jets lost that game. Andy Dalton 2020. Like those are the first three that come to mind for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking back. I'm looking up like the 2020 season, the COVID year. I'm just kind of looking through that schedule. Yeah, what was the do you remember the Jacksonville game in 2020? Like that really bad Jaguars team that I think they only won maybe 1 or 2 games that year, and the Vikings had to beat them in like overtime. Who was there was I remember there being like a receiver or something for Jacksonville that it played well. I might be thinking about a different game.
So
Okay,
if you
let me
can
bring it
name
up
the
real
starting
quick.
quarterback of that game, I'd be
I just
impressed.
I just brought it up. I'm cheating here, but I just brought up Mike Glennon. Oh my God.
Oh, Glenn. Okay, yeah, you said it. All right, because I was
Mike
looking at,
Glennon.
but for a minute I thought it might have been Jake Luton, but it was the Mike Glennon game. Mike Glennon in that game tried to run, which makes no sense at all. He tried to run for a first down, and someone named Jordan Brailford strip sacked him and never played again. Like never played again.
That is wow. That's
I
incredible.
mean, you could actually say Teddy Bridgewater twice, because Teddy actually played really well. Do you remember against Carolina, Teddy hit like a 40-yard pass to set up a reasonably decent field goal chance to win the game for Carolina, and the
That's
guy
right.
missed it. And then in Miami, Teddy lit them up in the second half, and they were a fumble away from leading potentially a go-ahead drive late in that game. And as much as I feel bad for Teddy and what happened with his career, at the point he's playing against the Vikings in those games, he's not like what Teddy was before the knee injury. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad to get torched like that.
I think was the Teddy game when he was with the Panthers. Did Matt Rule do something really stupid in that game that ultimately like may have cost? I feel like there was like a timeout or something that he called, or like he didn't he kicked a field goal when he should have gone for it on 4th down or something. There was something from that game that I'm trying to remember that made me just think Matt Rule's an idiot and he should go back to coaching in college.
Ran the ball at some point. If I remember, it was or didn't run the ball. I think it was something like that. You're
Yeah, I
completely
think it
right.
was. They should have ran the ball, because I think if they
Yeah.
would have ran the ball and they would have kept the clock going and they decided to throw it on like, I don't know, 2nd down or something, and it was an incomplete pass and it gave the Vikings a chance. Okay. I think it was something like that.
Okay, I have another terrific nomination here, which is the Sam Darnold comeback game at Carolina. Even though the Vikings won that game, Sam Darnold was playing the worst football I've ever seen in my life. So bad, Rashad Breeland intercepted a pass, and then they came back in the final moments, and I think with the clock clicking to 0, he threw a touchdown to tie that game and converted a 2-point conversion. That
That
Yikes.
was the KJ Osborne winning touchdown in overtime, right?
It
At
was.
Carolina. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
Matthew Stafford threw 3 interceptions in a game the Vikings lost, which is actually quite funny. Skylar Thompson was the starting quarterback of that Miami game. That's a good pull. Yeah, it's not been that hard. It's not been that hard. In fact, how about even Justin Fields having a breakout game against them? Remember, he was doing terribly at the beginning of the season and then kind of found it there. So yeah, it's been Mac Jones. Mac Jones with like Matt Patricia calling the shots has the game of his career throwing all
That's
over the
right.
Vikings. I might need to make an article about this. This is wild. Like you should never count out any quarterback when they're playing the Vikings.
Never. I think didn't Mitch Trubisky have kind of a nice game on at US Bank Stadium a few years? I think it might have been the 2020. I keep calling it the COVID year, where the Bears came in and inexplicably won at US Bank Stadium, and I feel like Mitch Trubisky or like David Montgomery or something had like a really big day, and that ended up being the difference. I don't know.
I've got it. Yeah, Mitch Trubisky, 2020, had been benched for Nick Foles, by the way, and then came back after maybe Foles got hurt or lost a bunch of games in a row or whatever happened. And he went 15 for 21 with 202 yards. And I believe threw them a late interception in that game that gave the Vikings a chance at the goal line, but still ended up running for 34 yards. And David Montgomery had a $146 and 2 touchdowns in that game. Yeah. Yeah. It has been a time. It's so weird because my first introduction to Vikings football was when I was traded for 3 firsts to move to Minnesota. And I walk into the Vikings locker room in 2016, and it is Hunter, Griffin, Rhodes, Kendricks, Barr, Terrence Newman's still very good at that point. And I'm like, this team's got some guys who can play football. And Mike Zimmer, of course, a tremendous defensive coach. And we're watching a week-to-week basis, even when they were starting to slip there. They're just great. And then the second year of me covering the team, they have the number 1 defense. And even in 18 and 19, they were above average defenses. And it was almost like, well, this is just how it's going to be as long as Mike Zimmer is the coach. And then I added this up today, Manny. This is nuts because I've mentioned this stat, but I couldn't remember it exactly. They've drafted 34 players on defense since 2015. And they have 3 starters on the defense right now. And it's a Caleb Evans, Cam Bynum, and who am I thinking of? Maybe Mekhi Blackman. There's one other one. But it's like, that's not good. That's
I guess. Well, if it's since 2015, Daniil would probably be the third one, right?
Yeah, after that, like say
after 15. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
got you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
That'll do it.
Yeah, you got to draft well, man. You got to. I mean, I know, I don't think that people should be panicking on the 2022 draft class because that's kind of the fancy thing to do right now. But if you have multiple drafts like 2022, that can get you in trouble. That can get you to where the Vikings currently are right now. So you got to be careful.
Jonathan mentions Matt Moore, who was apparently he was a gym teacher, but he was in retirement and beat them in 19. But that was outside of the realm of what we were talking about. But that was a classic. That was a classic. Like there used to be these games where there would be like this sort of Kirk Cousins freeze up games. And they don't seem to happen as much anymore. Maybe that's Kevin O'Connell. I don't know. Or maybe they're just always playing in shootouts. So if he does freeze up in the first half, we don't notice because he puts up 380 by the end of the game as they're playing from behind. So yeah, that was definitely one of them. But Chase Daniel in 2019 as well. That's why we never bought into that 19 team, because I was thinking about how they used to actually win games by multiple scores. And it's like, yeah, that happened in 19, but that's why we never believed in them, because they lost to Chase Daniel and Matt Moore. What a time. What a time.
That was the week after that was when Stephon Diggs went AWOL, right? And we didn't know where he was. And then that's when we got, or no, when was There's Truth to All Rumors? Was that towards the end of that year, or was that during that week?
No, it was right after. No, you've got it right. Yes.
Okay.
But my favorite part of that was that Diggs initially came out to talk to us and did a little fake cough and said that he was sick and forgot to tell them, and then looked around at us like, no one believes me, do they? And then he just answered the questions. Yes. Brandon Allen is brought up here by Tang. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that was the game where
game.
that was the game Stephon Diggs went off on the sideline, and they were getting whooped by a bad Broncos team, and then they came back and won. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it has been a journey, hasn't it? So I guess we'll see if we add Bryce Young to the mix. Do you think that they will win, Manny?
I do think they will win. I think especially if Bryce Young plays, I think they will. I think the Vikings will find a way. It's probably going to be ugly because that's just it's just how they roll now. It's just how they move. But I do think they'll find a way to win. The Panthers have just not looked good at all, and it's Bryce Young has struggled, but I think there's also just kind of a little bit of a talent gap, at least on offense. Their defense is pretty solid. They've got some guys on defense that could make things challenging for the Vikings. But I think overall the Panthers won't have enough offensively to move even on a struggling Vikings defense. And I think the Vikings will come away with a win.
Yeah, and Chuck mentions Josh Allen. So that's history right there for a rookie quarterback making one of his first starts, beating the Vikings. It does tend to happen. Also, good
The,
to see you, Chuck, in the comments.
the hurdle over
Yeah,
Anthony
Josh.
Barr.
That's right. Yeah, and he'll never forget that. Josh brings up a good point. This is a whole off-season episode. I mean, you're right about that. But there's a part of me also that has been kind of like dragged down by this week. And so I wanted to have fun. I wanted to get the shades on and make some jokes and stuff. So did Josh asked if Davenport practiced today? He did. Yeah, he but on a limited basis. So I don't know what's going to happen there. That's a tough one. That's a
That's
tough one.
tough, man. That's hard because you would love to see how he could, if he was healthy. You'd love to see how he could fit in there. I mean, and they need somebody else outside of Daniil Hunter that can get some pressure on the quarterback. There's just nobody on the interior of that line that can do anything remotely close to that, and that's been the biggest problem for that defense so far.
There's the thing with an injured player not getting out there and frustration about not getting out there. I always hate it because it's just I'm sure that the guy wants to play, and when you see him practice in training camp, he is humongous and so quick, and he's got so much talent, and I think he could be good for them, but he just has not been able to get out there, and I don't know what to say. If you're a defensive end or outside linebacker, ankle is a big deal. It's very hard to get any explosiveness off of it. So it's like, well, it's just an ankle or something, but I mean, how do you get that burst if you don't have, your ankle at least doing well? So that's a tough one because I think he could be a really good player for them if he can get healthy and back on the field. But sometimes these things just don't go the way they're supposed to. And Tang asked if Reisner is confirmed. Is not. I don't know. They have not said if what he's going to do. So the Panthers are terrified. They've considered not actually even showing up at the stadium because we haven't said where Reisner's going to play. So
Yeah, there's only one spot on the offensive line where Dalton Reisner should be playing. There's only one, and we all know what that position is. Like, let's just announce him as a starter and let's go. Just
yeah.
do it.
Okay. So we're wrapping up, Manny. Calm yourself. But next week, if they're 1-3, then we talk about Taylor Swift coming to town, and it gets a little more interesting, and then we can have less of a off-season type discussion and much more of a let's break down this game when we're talking about next week. So Manny, always a great time hanging out with you and all of you as well. I feel like we're making it a tradition for people to watch the Monday or Thursday game, listen to us at the same time, and have a good time. So thanks for your time and for everybody else, and we will catch you all later. Football.